I recently read Jeff Haden's The Motivation Myth, How High Achievers Really Set Themselves Up for Success. The book outlines a practical approach for discovering and sustaining motivation to accomplish any goal. While several concepts have been covered, here are 3 key lessons that I have learned from the book. They include the following. Number 1, motivation is not the trigger. Number 2, the importance of focus, process, and goals. And number 3, becoming a serial high achiever. Most people think of motivation as a precursor to anything. Without motivation, there is no action, and without action, the possibility of success is slim. Haden argues that motivation is an outcome. It is the result of taking action and experiencing success, which in turn builds more motivation to take more action. This begs the question, how do I get started? The answer is simpler than you think. Just start. As you take action using your finite reserves of willpower, you begin to ease up on the task at hand. Observing the progress that you are making is oftentimes all the motivation you need to keep going. Haden states, you don't need motivation to break a sweat. Break a sweat and you'll feel motivated. This creates a spillover effect. Remember, success builds confidence. So accomplishing a particular goal often gives us the motivation and confidence to go out and achieve other goals. Over time, you begin to experience consistent progress in multiple areas of your life. Haden argues, if you feel good about yourself in one way, you tend to feel better about yourself in other ways as well. After all, if you can do one thing well, you can do many things well. In doing so, your self-identity begins to change. Your perception of yourself and your abilities grow. Haden writes, becoming something is incredibly motivating. When you transform yourself into a leader or an entrepreneur or a runner or a musician, you no longer need motivation or willpower because that's who you are. Think of it this way. Success builds motivation, which builds more success, which builds more motivation, which builds more success, which equals becoming. Constant decision making is the enemy of motivation. Decision anxiety depletes our finite reserves of willpower. Haden quotes Dr. Travis Bradbury, author of the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0, who writes, as the day goes on, we have decreased difficulty asserting self-control. As self-control wears out, we feel tired and find tasks to be more difficult, and our mood sours. To me, self-control is nothing more than a byproduct of making a decision between several choices. Because in order to carry out a particular decision, we must exercise self-control. This is why creating a process or routine can be so powerful. Once designed and implemented, you begin to see signs of progress, which in turn leads to you trusting the process. Haden says, your routine isn't something you choose to do, it's just what you do. And you stop making choices that don't support your goals. After setting a huge goal for yourself, it is important that you forget about that goal and instead focus on the process. This is because there is currently a significant difference between how you perceive your future self to be compared to who you are right now. As a result, any small step taken towards achieving your big goal is deemed to be insufficient in your eye, given the long journey ahead. Haden argues that this can be incredibly demoralizing. No wonder you give up on that huge goal. By focusing on the process, you receive consistent positive feedback as you improve. As a result, you start to compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who you plan to be. You might be thinking to yourself, what's the difference between a goal and a process? Well, in the book, Haden outlines several examples to distinguish between the two. Think of it this way. If you're a manager, your goal is to develop your employees. Your process is how you identify areas for improvement, create implementation plans, follow through on training, coaching, and feedback. Meanwhile, if you're a parent, your goal is to raise healthy, happy kids. Your process is how you build your children's self-confidence and self-esteem, nurture their dreams, instill important values. As you follow through on your routine each and every day, Haden writes, your only job is to not break the chain. Haden makes an interesting distinction between those who are world-class at a particular discipline compared to those who are considered to be serial high achievers. If you were to follow the logic of Malcolm Gladwell, author of the book Outliers, you would find that it takes approximately 10,000 hours of focused effort to become extremely skilled in a particular field. Let's assume that, for the sake of argument, this is true. That means that, as Haden writes, the average person will need to put in about 40 hours a week for 5 years to become highly skilled in their chosen pursuit. Now, let's also assume that to be world-class at something, you need to be at the top 0.01% of the world's population in terms of that skill. Applying the 10,000 hour rule may not necessarily get you to that level, but you will certainly be better than around 90 to 95% of the world's population at that particular skill. Now imagine trying to be world-class in multiple pursuits. It is extremely difficult to be in the top 0.01% of the population in different and sometimes conflicting pursuits. However, it is definitely possible to become better than 90 to 95% of the global population in multiple different disciplines. In doing so, you become a serial high achiever. Haden writes, work too hard on any one aspect of your life and other aspects suffer. That's why it's so hard to be world-class at anything, much less at several things. Get to the 90 or 95% in any pursuit and you will be extremely successful. In today's world, it is commonly perceived that in order to succeed, you need to be a specialist over a generalist. Haden argues against this notion by saying something that I thought was very powerful. When specific knowledge is more and more a commodity, and it is, because information is more widely available than ever, the people who can synthesize and blend and apply a broad base of skills to a variety of functions and problems are the people who are most valued. For example, by developing experience in multiple disciplines, you are better able to identify a niche in a particular market or a new innovative product which you can use to start a company, movement, or trend. Now, it is important to note that when examining serial high achievement, Haden is not suggesting that we simply undertake numerous pursuits all at once. I'm 20 years old. Some of you may be younger and some older, albeit for most of you watching this, you would be around about my age. Regardless, with advancements in modern medicine, you are very likely to live for another 60 if not 70 more years. Once again, let's apply Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule, which stipulates that you can become extremely skilled at a particular discipline over the span of 5 years. That means that you have, give or take, 11 to 13 5-year periods ahead of you. You could, reasonably speaking, use that time to accomplish 11 to 13 huge goals in your life. This gives you, as Haden writes, enough time to be a serial achiever, a person who accomplishes this, then that, then that, then that. In doing so, you begin to establish a multifaceted identity, seeing yourself as an "and" person. This refers to a person who is this, and this, and this, and this. By the end of this year, I hope to see myself as a UWA graduate, marathon runner, and YouTuber. So, what's your "and"? You might be thinking to yourself, wouldn't consistently switching between multiple different pursuits lower your skill level in each of them over time? Now, while this is true, Haden says, strength is hard to build the first time, but regaining strength lost is much easier. And even if you do lose a significant amount of skill, that's okay. The confidence and fulfillment you gain from all your hard work and dedication will in themselves make your effort worthwhile. You will always be able to look back and think, I did that. So those were the 3 key lessons that I learned from Jeff Haden's The Motivation Myth, how high achievers really set themselves up for success. I highly recommend this book for anyone who's interested in motivation, routines, and the importance of setting goals. Haden also delves into concepts like willpower, progressive development, and the importance of consulting a pro instead of a coach, amongst other topics. I hope you found this informative and in some way applicable to your own life. What are your thoughts on motivation? Feel free to leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you.